welcome everybody to Flow Global Talks. Today, I have two honorable members of the Flow coaching community, Ni Chen from Germany and Sheldon from Niagara-on-the-Lake from GTA, Canada, and myself from Toronto. So in our global talks today, Flow Global Talks today, we will be talking about executive coaching and in what ways coaching helps executives thrive. And we will be sharing our experiences as executive coaches with you here. And we are also live streaming this on Instagram as well. So if you are not familiar with Flow Global Talks concept, it's a webinar series that we have been hosting for our community and also for the global coaches community, where we use this as an opportunity, these webinars as an opportunity to share and exchange information about coaching, mentoring, personal development, leadership development, and also we share industry insights, we share about latest trends. Sometimes we host workshops through these webinars. So if you were not familiar with what you have been doing, I suggest that you follow up and stay in tune. I want to introduce my hosts today. Sue Sheldon is a master certified coach. Sue is one of the first master certified coaches of Canada. Sue, how long have you been coaching now, if you don't mind me asking?
Okay, I have been coaching for over 20 years.
And are you enjoying it still?
I thought I had never stayed at any job or business for any length of time. So what continues to amaze me is that I continue to learn. Mm-hmm. So I love it.
You love it, yeah. It's such an rewarding career. You keep learning, you know. I have the same experience. I feel like each time I learn something new or source of information for myself, even after more than 12 years now. And Niv, I remember that, you know, you told me a story about what made you to transition to executive coaching. Do you want to share your story with us?
Yeah, sure. So I got there actually completely by accident. So I was doing the transition transformations with teams, and that's where I really like to work, coaching teams and transforming them from one point to another point. And very quickly it happens when teams inside a corporation transform, they run into the limits of the team. And then they push you as a coach to work with their executives, with their directors. And that's basically what's pushed me. I didn't want it, and I know it's a nice title to work with executive coach. I didn't search for it, but I was pushed for it by the teams I was working with. The reason is because you cannot make a real impact unless you change the system where the people or the person operating. And to change a system, you need an executive. Mm-hmm. And through those teams, I think I've been coaching teams for 10 years and executive for 7 years. So it took me a little bit, maybe the courage as well, and also the understanding that it's not just the bottom-up method, but I also need to do top-down at the same time.
Yeah.
And that's how I got there.
Recently, I spoke at the HR conference in Toronto, the annual HR conference in Toronto, and I introduced a concept of using and positioning coaching and mentoring as well from a change management perspective. So what you just described, like, you know, the change requires a top-down approach sometimes. You know, there is a research indeed about this from McKinsey Corporation, and 70% of change management initiatives fail due to lack of management skills, managerial skills, and also employee resistance. And to me, because most of those, managers, senior managers, lack facilitation, coaching, and mentoring skills, they don't know how to manage with or how to cope with resistance when there's change at stake. So today we will be sharing our experiences as executive coaches. But before that, I also want to introduce myself in case you don't know about me, you don't know me. I am Talia Vardar, co-founder of Flow Coaching Institute and a professional certified coach for 15 years now. And my background is also corporate. So having been an executive myself, I wish that I had a good executive coach when I was an executive, because I made so many mistakes. So in case you don't have experience about what executive coaching is, but you're curious about learning, executive coaching is a thought-provoking, creative leadership between an executive and a coach who has an understanding about that world, a professional certified coach. And in the beginning of the executive coaching practice, maybe 15 years ago, maybe 20 years ago, there was a lot of effort in to prove its use and to prove that it's working and it's a return on investment. And therefore, a lot of companies researched about and tried to prove that, or tried to understand the value of executive coaching and ran some numbers and realized that, executive coaching, and some of those numbers, by the way, came from like companies such as Microsoft, Dell, Hewlett Packard, those big multinationals. And those researchers, they proved that, executive coaching can be an ROI, return on investment, sometimes even more than 10 times. And luckily, in today's industry, it has become a common practice. So human resources, CEOs, and the management teams, they really appreciate and understand the value of the relationship of executive coaching. So we don't have to prove it because it's a common practice. But I just wanted to share with you on screen, you see now, a brief survey ran by PwC, PricewaterhouseCoopers, in 2018 regarding like top 3 reasons executive coaches are engaged with executives, and the cost of, hourly cost of executive coaching, and the reasons why, executives come to coaches, and why do they work, with coaches. So while you review that on the screen, I want to ask a question to Niamh. So Niamh, in your experience working with senior managers, executives, and leaders, why do they come to you? Why do they want to work with you?
Yeah, so the pace in the industry, in every industry, is tremendously fast. There's no industry that is not anymore touched by anything. Everybody is scared of really fast change. Everybody's scared of Google getting into their business or Amazon getting into their business. So they really have to change fast. And changing fast means today being able to mobilize your people. Mm-hmm. And this is where they run into problems. Mobilizing people who are getting used to the work they're doing, who are expert in their doing in the age of information, where everybody is well informed, is not that trivial. Like, this is where I want to go, everybody follows. Today, everybody has their own values, their own mind, and it's a delicate work And it's very difficult. Leadership is a very difficult work. You need to align personal values with personal goals with the company's mission. And that's really a big challenge. That's mainly the reason where companies approaching me, an executive, trying to find out a way, how do I create a culture that helps me to mobilize people, and not just once, but repetitive change.
Mm-hmm. How do I create a culture that mobilizes people? That's really a challenging mission, but yet they have to do it. So, Sue, in your experience, what would you say the reasons why executives were coming to you to work with you?
Thanks for asking, Talia. It's really about understanding the reason that they come to me that helps you as their coach facilitate the change that they want. So often they come to me because they have had a 360 feedback or the use of some tool, or they have found out that they're not as effective as they think they are. And with top executives, CEO level, C level mostly, the job can be very lonely. They don't feel they can trust someone to talk to them about some of the issues they're dealing with. And when it comes to motivation for change, they may have their own motivation, but they don't understand the motivation of their people and they can't get them on board. So helping them understand their own motivation is the partnering with them to really understand their own motivation is the factor that makes the difference when they start to work with their people. They never thought of it before that they had to understand their motivation. They just thought the boss says it's time to change, so we have to change. And it doesn't work that way. And helping them understand the way that they can talk about change and find out and help people figure out what is their motivation to change. What's the reason for change? Sometimes it's just out of fear. They won't keep their job. Sometimes it's because they need to do something and it won't be the exact same thing as the executive wants. So getting underneath that level of understanding is really important.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's interesting that you both, emphasize change. And I've been thinking about this, before connecting with you guys. I mean, what is the top also challenge that I witness as an executive coach is in the life of an executive that I observe is change, the fast pace of change in today's world. And at the same time, time also is a challenge for executives. Like, there is change and they're responsible for mobilizing people, not only themselves, but mobilizing people. And at the same time, they need to keep motivating themselves. That requires a lot of power and resilience. And at the same time, they have to do this within a limited time. There are deadlines and deadlines and deadlines. So there is always a race of, completing something within a certain, deadline. So in my experience, other than these two, like, self-motivation and change, time also is a challenge, has become a challenge for executives. What would you say about this? Have you observed the same thing maybe in Germany, like working with, because we are in different parts of the world working with different, cultures and backgrounds. So I'm curious if it is the same in Germany, in Europe.
Right, yeah. So you mentioned about the time pressure that they have in order to reach their goals, in order to reach transformations. And transformation by itself is very difficult. And doing it under time pressure, it's even more challenging. And this is the thing is, you also mentioned how they've obsessed on goals. And there's this experiment, it's called the Good Samaritan experiment, which basically it says at the end of it, the moral is that when you're obsessed with goals, you forget to be human.
Yeah.
And this is the balance, the challenge that really executives really have is that, first of all, they're not being seen as humans. roughly, I'm exaggerating probably, but they're bankers and they're executives in industries and they're making millions and we're not. And there's a big gap. There's really a big gap in how they're perceived. That's on the one hand. On the other hand, when you sit with them, you really see people just like us. They're confused. How do you mobilize 3,000 people who are spread over 5 locations? How do you make a unite culture for that kind of organization? It's a very difficult job. And this balance about deadlines, it's something that we talk a lot about coaching, about what goals do I really need to reach all the goals, and what is the price that I'm willing to pay? I mean, how much of your relationship are you willing to sacrifice for that goal? And once you reached it, because you're going to be executive for 3-5 years, not for 1 year. So once you reach the goal, first year, what is the state of your relationship to reach the next goal? It's a very, very delicate balance for executives in Europe, especially because the history of European organizations is coming from a very social point of view, and through capitalization, it changed.
Sue, do you have anything to add to what Neil just shared with us?
Yes, I love the fact that both of you are talking about the experience of the people that you're leading. And quite often what happens is, and this was made clear to me when I read a book by Peter Block called The Answer to How is Yes. And it took me 2 readings of that book to even understand what it meant. But the thing is, people inside organizations want to say yes to change. The thing is, they don't understand their own motivation. And the executive might have a different motivation to change things than they do. And yet an executive is going to motivate their people or help them to move into the change much more readily and easily if they can help their people understand why they're making this change. So the answer is yes, but they don't know how, because they haven't figured out why. Why are we even doing this? Why that issue that we were dealing with, it worked really well when we had this approach. So it's not working anymore. So what has changed? Allowing individuals at the executive level and below the leader, his executive C-level team, they can listen to what the leader says, but they might not agree. And if you have that level of dissension going on at the executive level, just imagine 10 times, 100 times that for your people below that level, because they don't understand why. Why am I doing this? Why am I making this change?
And in my experience, that is where, I would call this as a blind spot, maybe, because if they don't understand the why, there might be a blind spot or many blind spots. So executive coaches really help, a skilled executive coach, of course, really help executives to realize that and to maybe catalyze that. What is your experience with that, Sue?
Well, when I ask them, I'm laughing because the role of the executive, the C-level, is often very isolated. And when you say, what do your individual see at a table, think of this change. They might say to me, they don't need to think anything. They just need to do it. And when I can ask them, so what do you think the impact is going to be on your C-level people if they're not touching into their own motivation, they're not understanding? And it takes that kind of question and asking that kind of question of the executive for them to start to go, wow, I never thought about that because I always did what I was told. I said, yeah, did what you were told. Things are changing. Executives have their own issues going on, and they're thinking more about why they would even do this change. They want to get on board, but they haven't found their own motivation. So let me ask you, and then I'll talk to the executive about what's your motivation to change? What will be different when you change? How will that affect your process of change and your understanding of getting the team on board?
Mhm. Yeah. Um, I like what you just said, like how, what is your role in leading this? So just, putting the executive in the center of that. And I remember working with a VP from a bank. And indeed, it was a forced relationship, forced by the CEO of the bank, because they thought that, they wanted to promote the VP, but they also realized that the VP didn't own the impact that he had in his team and on other people and maybe even colleagues. So we met and we realized that there's chemistry, and I always asked him this question: what is your impact? And I encouraged him to get feedback from his people. And in the first 3 months, he resisted. He didn't want to get feedback from his people, because in his, he was old school, like the old school, executive. So in his perception, asking for feedback from the people that you govern, you manage, was weakness. So we really worked on that perception, indeed, and changed that perception that, asking feedback is not a weakness, it's a strength. It shows a lot of confidence, leadership, and executive confidence. And that was a blind spot. So I'm telling this story because there are different ways of working through motivation and still putting the executive in the center of the responsibility. And I hope that these examples are helping you guys to understand how, executive coaching work in the relationship. And Neil, do you want to add anything? Like, do you have a story to share with us, maybe a specific story?
Yeah, so the feedback is very interesting. There's little feedback that goes up the ladder. Lots of feedback goes down, but very little comes up. And Sue mentioned the 360 degrees survey, and that's something that actually here in Europe, they really like it. They really like to see the feedback. They have the hierarchies, even when they're broken down, it's still in the people's mind, and there's less feedback coming up the ladder. And it's a really strong tool, 360 here, in order to transparent, to see we call it here, the external image of yourself, not your own image. And that's really strong tool here. And it's almost like a baseline that we use in coaching. Mm-hmm. And what I find in my role, most of the time, I have a big role in coaching, but I have sometimes a bigger role as a facilitator. Because as a coach, you can discuss with the customer a lot about their topics and their issues. But at the end of the day, if it's a CEO of a big corporation, it's very easy to know that how much an hour of his time worth. And if you notice immediately there's a core problem somewhere else, there's like, go to the source where you have the problem with your colleague, go to the source to basically you don't spend time, you stop it and you facilitate the CEO going to his colleague and solving it there. Just go to the source and solve it. And I find that it's also an interesting balance to see how much time I'm really coaching and how much of the time I'm really facilitating.
That's a good balance. And sometimes even mentoring, in the relationship. So we have, I think, a question from Anthony. I will just invite Anthony because she raised hand, but you're muted, so I can't unmute you. If you want to ask your question, Anthony, please unmute yourself. Yeah, so far we heard about like managing change more effectively, understanding self-motivation and leadership motivation, illuminating blind spots, I will say, like which leads us to self-awareness. There's a concept, leadership concept called authentic leadership, which can be only embraced and developed with self-awareness. So I believe that executive coaching really is a very powerful process in helping the executive to understand their impact from a holistic perspective, not only from some tactical goals or transactional perspective. So and then there are tools that we already mentioned, like 360 or some inventories or some assessment centers. In North America, by the way, if there are people in the call from Europe or EMEA regions or other, maybe Asia, in North America, using assessment centers for giving a decision about like promoting the executive or manager is not legal. But it is used, I know that it is used by so many companies from Coca-Cola to PwC in European countries, EMEA, and other places. So sometimes that is why they came to an executive coach. They have the, either 360 feedback in their hands or assessment center report in their hands, and they have to do something regarding that. So these are like, more types of executive coaching sponsored by the organization, but there is another type where the executive wants to work with a coach, executive coach, and they sponsor individually. So do you have cases like this? Sue, what would you say?
I do have situations like that. And what has happened is the leader knows somehow or another that something's not right. And yet they don't have a way of defining it. And they may have gotten some feedback that you're a great money manager, you create lots of opportunity for our organization, but you leave a trail behind you. They might have just got that feedback from HR, or they might just realize on some level that something's not working. So what's really important at that point is to understand clearly for yourself as the coach, what is it that this individual wants to change? And again, I'm going to go back to motivation. What's their reason for changing? Because until they understand that they are getting in their own way, you could say, until they understand that, or even buy into the notion that someone might have a different opinion of them than they have of themselves, which is, sometimes they don't. They got to this level of being an executive. Why would I need to change? Why would I need to do anything different? So helping them understand the pace of change, that what they're going through, what they're finding by behaving the way they're behaving or leading their people. And some of them are absolute control freaks. They seem to need do that, be in control all the time. I once had an executive who was an introvert. And so if anybody had a meeting, if they had a meeting with his C-level team and anyone put a question on that they had not given him enough time to think about in advance, he used to go ballistic and he used to get really annoyed. And when we went deeper under that and found out what was going on, it was about his belief that he had to know all the answers. So working with him to help him understand that he didn't know all the answers and he had some options or he had some choices. So for example, he could say, I don't know the answer to your question, but give me 24 hours or give me to the end of the business day and I'll find out. And so they could come back with a report that would satisfy the question, but not necessarily have to know the answer. And when an executive, when you really understand their motivation and understand what's behind it, there are some things you might not be able to figure out on your own, but certainly understanding the client and getting that information from them creates awareness for them, awareness for you, and what kind of questions do you need to ask.
Thank you. And And also in my experience, just, adding to what you just said, I observe that, that is such an isolated job. Being an executive, especially if it's C-level, it's such an isolated job because they can't share their personal stories with everybody, or challenges, even personal challenges with everybody, and sometimes even aspirations and inspirations with everybody. So there are times I felt like, is this relationship really helping you? Because I don't feel like, the relationship has an outcome frame or, goal oriented. The feedback that I get from them is that, it really helps them because they feel like they're heard, and they feel like they have a wise friend, and they feel like, they're broadening their perspective by just telling me and me asking them, those questions. So I really do very little in those relationships, and I listen and maybe ask 3-4 questions and share my perspective, and that's all. And the feedback that I get from them is that it's really helping them and really eliminating their isolation. So it is awareness, but at the same time, I find that it is about having somebody, a trusted friend that you can have, and that helps you to motivate yourself from inside, from within. So that creates a lot of resilience. That's what I found out in my practice. And Niv, in your experience, if you just list top 3 benefits for the executive that they may get from the relationship of coaching, what would they be? Top 3 benefits.
Yeah, so 2 benefits I already mentioned. So one of them is they get a coach, but together with it, they get a facilitator. Somebody is facilitating the relationship to their C-levels, to the directors. This is very important. As I see, as the life gets busy and they get more people, now the span of control gets wider. We manage more people with less managers. They have less time to create relationship. And this is the one thing that a coach supports as well in facilitating those relationships. The second point is the feedback and the feed forward that a coach provides. At least in my work, I work in transformations, which means I don't work only on horizontal, only with the C-level. I would go with C-levels and go all the way down to teams, which means that to really get all the feedback running up, but also get feed forward. Look, this is what the team really needs you for, and this is where you can support your transformations. It's your transformations. Yeah? So the flow of opinions from down there, but also that is transported through a coach. It's not just like complaints. There's a process that a coach does with teams that he can reflect that feedback in a very constructive way into actions. Most of the times, executives talk to employees. What they hear is employees complaining, and they come and say, I have the wrong employees. They're just complaining. They talk about problems. They don't bring me solutions. So the process to work with the coach, with the teams, and then with the coach on the executive level, really helps them to understand their people better.
Mm-hmm.
And
I like your summary, because you don't only mention about the benefits from the executives, individual perspective, individual context, but from the organizational context as well. So executive coaching not only benefits the person that you coach, but at the same time, it really benefits the organization and its people, because let's admit, executives have the power of influencing many lives, many people, because of their area of influence. So what I'm hearing from you is a more systemic, outcome.
Yeah, I mean, as a coach, at the end of the day, you don't work based on hours, right? You don't spend lots of hours in the company. You have actually very few hours, and with those few hours, you want to make the biggest impact possible. And the biggest impact possible is visible in a financial way. So your KPIs as a coach will also be financial KPIs, because that's the impact that you need. And the third point, so there's like coach as a coach and facilitator. The second one would be the feedback and the feed forward, that you can digest it in a different way. And the third point, Sue mentioned that it can be really lonely at the top. So you're a sparring partner, but it's a special sparring partner, because you're not always the nice guy or the nice girl. You're at eye level, and they really like that. That's something they really appreciate. Somebody that talks to me at eye level, and they also tell me when I'm not doing right, when I'm not okay. Like the question that I like to ask them when they tell about a story or interaction that they have during a meeting, during a board meeting, then I ask them, the way you reacted, how is that contributing? How is that supporting you in reaching your goal? How this behavior contributes to you moving your organization forward. And this is another thing. This is the critic voice. That's something you also teach. You also teach in the Flow Coaching Institute, is to use the different voices, and also to raise a critical voice that makes every coachee at the end of the day. It doesn't matter what kind of alpha person that is. It makes every coachee to step back and say, okay, wait, I need to rethink that, because what I just told as a nice show-off story, maybe it was not that good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a very good summary. Thank you, Niv. So, do you have other, benefits that you would like to add to Niv's list?
I have a quick story that I was pitching for, as an organization, pitching for a team coaching at the C level. I had coached the CEO, so I was now coaching the C-level people, and I was the third organization that had come in, and I was asked the ROI, return on investment question, and out of my mouth, before I even realized it came, the question was, how do you measure return on investment? I said, I don't know. And the COO said to me, what do you mean you don't know? And I said, I don't know how you measure things around here. So I could not begin to say how they could measure if I didn't know how they measured. So it was really important. I got hired to do the work of coaching this executive team. And the thing was, I said, I will commit to do that as one of the initial pieces of work together. And what became really apparent was how dysfunctional they were at the level of measuring success. I could never have done that if I hadn't admitted in my own way that I didn't know how to measure success in there, or I didn't know what what the ROI was, because I might have said three things that would have applied to them, but that would not have gone beneath the issue of the problem that they had agreeing on what was important to them. Yeah. So it's really, really important for even you working with the CEO. He kind of knew that I was going to do that anyway. But I'm not laughing at it. In some ways, some people don't want to take on that work. If you don't have that agreement or alignment, even if people do things differently, it doesn't really matter, but they're still working to the same goal. They got the ladder, a Stephen Covey's statement, they got the ladder up against the right wall. Yeah. You have to have that.
Thank you, Sue. What you just said, I really like what you just said about measuring success, because we also teach it at Flow Coaching Institute about setting success criteria is part of the coaching relationship, and we know how to do it in the beginning of the relationship. And those criteria sometimes are quantitative criteria, but a lot of times they're more qualitative criteria. So how you can turn a broad, outcome into a specific, measurable, achievable and timely criteria goal is one of the elements of important elements of not only executive coaching relationship, but also any kinds of coaching relationship in the ICF world. So I have a list here about different reasons why people, executives, come to executive coaches. This is just a list. There are other reasons, of course, but leadership goals, leadership challenges, governance sometimes is an important topic, managerial skills development, personal development. I really, sometimes I call myself as a life coach for executives because a lot of times, yes, it is about leadership, managing people, but at the same time, a lot of times it's about personal stress, lack of time or self-awareness. And when you create coach the executive with those things like self-awareness, self-motivation, then there's a lot of personal development in the relationship happens for the executive as well. So people skills is a big topic in executive coaching. Personal support, sometimes executives know what kind of support they want. They might have a specific goal and look for an executive coach regarding that. Communication challenges, drailing behavior, bad leadership, that is also a case. Sometimes bad reputation or toxic relationship. Sometimes lack of perspective or gaining a vision, like a broader vision and broader perspective. Succession is a big thing. Preparing for future leadership. We talk about change, and the pace of change requires everybody, and not only leaders, to prepare for a future that is unknown to many. So we really help them as executive coaches to have the right mindset for that. And wise friend is my term versus sounding board. We become their wise friends. You used a term, Neil, I cannot remember, but you used a very good term instead of wise term. I will maybe remember.
A sparring partner?
Yes, yeah, I like that very much. So these are the main reasons, and I have another question for you guys. In your experience of working with different kinds of leaders, the ones that are more successful, the ones that are least successful, or the ones that are just, mediocre. I want your personal opinion on this. What do you think are the top 3 leadership qualities that today's leaders should embrace? Your personal opinion. So I will share mine while you're thinking. So I think adaptability is one of the top in today's world, and curiosity, I would say, because when you stay curious, you wouldn't have to just, make one judgment. And decisiveness, also is an important. And I will add the 4th, coaching abilities, because today's leaders should have coaching skills to lead change, manage change. So what about you now, Neil? What would you say?
So what I've noticed for transformational leadership, what helps leaders is when they can manage 3 parameters, which are very difficult. One is providing enough autonomy for their people. On the other hand, involving them in the decision making, and not only this is the direction, now you have autonomy to do the things, but really being part of the process. And the 3rd parameter is really difficult. It's aligning personal goals to organizational goals. This is very, very difficult. There are people in their own personal goals to the organizational goals. And if you look at culture change that executives trying to drive in their organizations, what they're trying to do is to set upfront company values and then implant those values into every employee. And that's really difficult because value is really the base thing. It's like impossible to change it. Unless you're working like an army, you break people and then you build them up front. It's even difficult. In coaching, we have lots of tools and methods just to search for your values. We're not even reprogramming you. So it's a very big challenge, aligning your goals, your personal goals to your organizational goals.
Mm-hmm. It's challenging, and yet at the same time, it's possible. That's what I, witnessed and observed. And what is in it for them is an important question. We have different ways of asking that question, but, helping them to dig in and go and find out, the common ground between their personal values and the, goals of the organization. And Sue, I will direct the same question to you. What do you think? Top 3 leadership qualities for leaders today?
Thanks for leaving me to the last. I tell you, everybody else has taken all the great answers. But what I want you to really know and understand that you as an executive coach will experience the strength factors of the executive in different ways. So the first thing that I find with any executive, can they listen? Do they have any ability to listen? And the second factor, in my belief, is that ability to change. If they have a fixed way of looking at things, it's going to be difficult to bring anyone along to make any changes. And the last one I said, openness to the differences, because you're going to have a team which is not going to operate. They're not in the image of you. And some executives find that if they don't have that image of the person doing exactly the same things as they do, they're unwilling to accept those differences. You have to have an incredible willingness to be open to those differences.
Especially in today's world, there is really diversity on a global scale everywhere, not only in just, North America, but everywhere there is diversity, and in multinationals especially. So that's a very good one. Thank you, Sue.
Thank you.
My last question, regarding, because you both, are very capable of flow coaching methodology, and Neve, you are a flow certified professional coach. And in what ways do you see flow coaching methodology is helping you to coach executives in the relationship and when you're in the session with the person, and also from the process point of view?
Mm-hmm. So looking at the time, I'm going to make my answer really concise. So where I really find flow model to be really helpful, and it doesn't have in every model, is when they get stuck, to get them unstuck, because there's one spot in the flow model where you concentrate on the point of what's going to block you from achieving this. This is where to get stuck. This is where I use it to help them to get unstuck.
Mm-hmm. So moving from problem orientation to positive, or solutions orientation, we have a specific model for that positive change tunnel. It really helps them to get away from that problem orientation and walk towards the solution orientation. Thank you. I like that very much. And Sue, you have been teaching with us for many years now, many times now, and you have a lot of experience with other models too. So I want to ask this specific question to you.
What I love about the flow model is the strength-based approach. So we're not talking about weaknesses. We're not talking about what doesn't work. We focus on what does work, and we absolutely have them understand what it means to be in flow. Because everybody can tell you about an opportunity when they're in flow. They can also tell you when they weren't in flow. So you can focus on what is the factors? What are the factors that contribute to you being in flow?
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And also, when we say flow, sometimes people think that, flow is about being present, being in the moment. Indeed, from a leadership perspective, flow is about mastering, those qualities that you want to embrace with the help of the coach, and how flow will look like from a leadership perspective. That's what we focus on as, flow executive coaches in the relationship. So we're coming towards the end. There will be a Q&A session that I want to run. I just want to inform everybody about our upcoming programs. We have an upcoming winter intensive program starting on Monday, and you obtain ACC certification hours in just 4 weeks in this winter intensive program. And then we have a business coaching program, same, it's still an ACC, ICF ACC certification program on our regular schedule of 15 weeks. And in business coaching, we specifically focus on helping coaches to obtain business coaching skills, executive coaching skills, corporate coaching skills, and help their coaches through strategic planning, through business planning, through SWOT analysis, strategic creativity, or business challenges of today's, atmosphere. And then we have our Core Foundations program starting on March 12th, 15 weeks. Again, it's ICF ACC certification program. In March, we also have an advanced coaching certification program, but the class is full. So winter intensive is almost full. We only have 1 spot left or 2 spots left. I'm not sure. So if you have any questions regarding our programs, please email us or call us. So we still have a pretty good, like 6 minutes now, let's say 5 minutes until the end of this, webinar. If you have specific questions for Sue, Niv, or myself, we will be happy to answer your questions. It can be about executive coaching in general, or taking some steps towards, if you're interested in becoming executive coaching, or if you're already practicing maybe executive coaching, we are happy to answer your questions. Let's wait for a few seconds and see if there are any questions. Sometimes there are so many questions, like we get like, I can't just, keep up with questions. Sometimes there are a few questions. So if you have like specific questions or, curious about learning. Do you need to have business degree or experience to be an executive coach? That's a very good question. So Sue, would you like to answer that?
Absolutely. I will tell you that in the beginning, the only business experience I had was working in the world of work. And what I discovered as I went through this was that I was avoiding working with executives because I didn't know how to do their job. But what I became more aware of, I don't have to know how to do their job. The fact is, I need them to be really clear about what aspects of their job they want to do differently. I can send them to executives that they might want to get information from about their job, but not knowing how to do it is an asset because you don't slip to advice. So when I was inspired by this one CEO, he said he wanted to, he was a CEO of a financial institution, and he was really good at the fiscal side of the business, but he wanted to find more experience or ability to be with the social side or the needs of his people. And the whole notion was to balance the workplace. So I was inspired totally by him. And he also helped me to figure out some questions that I could ask executive. I had lots of knowledge about what those roles entailed, but now I had some personal experience with dealing with him.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Sue. Anything to add, Neil? Do you have anything to add? There is a Q question. Okay, anything do you want to add to Neil?
I just close on Sue. That's it's right. You don't need to have the experience, but you do need to have the guts to approach those people, because they are raw. They're raw. Yeah. They don't have time. They give you feedback immediately. If you're not focused, they don't wait for a week or for the next session. They tell you immediately. But this is also a chance for a coach, because you develop and grow as a coach really fast in executive coaching. You get feedback immediately. They are shameless, they are ruthless, but that helps you to progress really fast.
and that comes with a lot of self-confidence, of course. Verna has a question for us. What are your recommendations for people who want to become executive coaches? So if I may answer that, finishing really starts with training, I would say, like educating yourself. And I would say ICF certification is the first step. And then on top of that, really educating yourself and researching about what kinds of, needs that executives have and how you can coach them. So in developing your skills and practice, maybe just, in the beginning, practice with 1, 2, 3 executives, and then get feedback and get mentoring support. That's also important from a seasoned, experienced mentor coach regarding your executive coaching skills. And but practicing and getting supervision, feedback, together with a good training will take you there. Of course, there's, as Niv mentioned, you should have the guts to reach out to those people and offer your service. That's also something. Sometimes in the beginning, you are not that confident, but in time, as you see that, what you provide is very valuable, you develop that confidence, or you have guts eventually to reach out. So anything that you want to add, Sue, to what I just summarized?
Absolutely love it. Educate, learn. When I got more clear about my purpose statement and who I am as a coach, then I was more inclined to approach that executive level, because I knew I could serve them. So get clear on your purpose, get clear on your values, and do some kind of strength assessment. Flow offers they have a relationship with authentic happiness, and authentic happiness has a strength-based approach. There's other strength-based approach, but having that comfort, I guess, or confidence that I listened well, and the things that I did well, then I was more able to approach them because I knew I had something to offer. So it is in your own confidence that allows you to move forward.
Mm-hmm. That's thank you, Sue. In my experience, I was an executive and I transitioned to, executive coaching. So I knew why I was driven to executive coaching. Having been one and having seen so much conflict, or lack of energy around me, I wanted to help executives to regain their flow, gain back their flow, understand that, they can create, design, experience, and maintain their flow. So that was my purpose, just to follow up with what Sue just said. Niv, we are at the end. Do you have anything to add before we close? Thank you, Bernard.
Yeah, just one sentence. So it helps at the beginning to have a niche, to have a focus, unless you're Sue Sheldon and you have that experience, and then people will believe you, they can coach on everything. But otherwise, executives don't buy it. If you said I'm doing behavioral coaching, transformational coaching, and different coaching, they don't buy it. So it's helping in order to get your foot in the door, just get a focus.
Yeah, focus is very important. Focus brings practice and also progress. Thank you very much, Neil. Thank you very much, Sue. It has been a pleasure having you here with our community. So we are at the end of our another Flow Global Talks webinar, and I'm looking forward to see you in many more others. And have a great rest of the day, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for inviting me.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you. Thank you.